Here to talk to us about Microsoft's future vision and strategy is Ali Faramawi, Corporate Vice President of Microsoft Corporation and President for Microsoft Middle East and Africa. Ali is a key member of Microsoft's international leadership team that is responsible for the company's global strategy, with a particularly visible role amongst the company's worldwide emerging markets community. Mr. Ali. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please take your seats for this session? هلا لو سمحت الكل ياخذ مقاعدهم. Please everybody take your seats for this session.
I always thought that the toughest session
is the one right after
it's an absolute honor and a pleasure to be with you in Jordan. Wonderful country, wonderful people, wonderful spirit, and for this conference as well. The conferences in general of this nature are kind of losing a bit of their steam worldwide because people are connecting all the time. Social media is there, blogging is there, you know, all of that. But the reality is with this particular conference, it's I think it's now 14 or 15 years. This is probably the 7th session. People are still in, people are still excited, which is really, really amazing. The other thing also that's always amazing, every time I come to Jordan, I get to learn about new companies, new ideas. And that spirit of innovation, technology, entrepreneurship is pretty amazing. In fact, we had a very private, a very short connection with His Majesty, and I think I think it was Marwan, where's Marwan? Yeah, Marwan's here. A friend of the industry, and someone who did, you know, his duty in the government as well. He said it's because the domestic market is not very big. You're actually forced to think outside. We're talking about disruption, okay? So let me do some disruption here a little bit. I'll try one more time. Okay, how many people from those who had the stamina to stay long, how many of you actually work in IT, information technology or communication? Okay, so it's about 60%. And the rest are interested, either you're somehow involved, you're interested. Okay, what do you think? What do you think? Just give it your best shot. What do you think is the toughest job in the world? And I want you to think about it in terms of interest, yani the job that a lot of people are interested in, they have an opinion about, but I want you also to think about expectations. People expect like very, very high stuff. Okay. Give it a try. I mean, it's not the head of the United Nations. The politicians are out, right, and the government is out. It's not the head of the United Nations because people don't have very high expectations from the United Nations. So, okay? It can be a head of a country, but even then, it's a head of a country, then people in the country will be much more interested than people outside the country. Give me some suggestions. Toughest job in the world. Global interest, lot of high expectations, and everyone has an opinion.
Mother.
Yeah. It is a tough job, but not everyone in San Francisco is thinking of it. What else? Come on, come on. Give me something. Sorry? The Pope. Yeah, it's a tough one. I agree. I don't think it's the toughest one, but more. Sorry? A program developer. I think you're onto something. I think you're onto something. Again, that's my personal opinion, okay? This is not Microsoft. This is Ali trying to do some disruption. One more. CEO? Which company?
Any CEO? I don't know. What are your expectations from the CEO of British American Tobacco, for example? I mean, it's important. Okay. A fund manager. Someone who needs to show returns on people's money. It's a personal opinion again, I think all of these are good. I actually think that the toughest job in the world is to be the head coach of the Brazilian football team. Well, listen to me. First thing is, everyone cares about Brazilian football. Even women who don't like football, there's something in the background about Brazilian football. The other thing is, the expectations are so high. Brazil has to play, even if they don't win, they have to play amazing football. That's why that last year was kind of a disaster. Because it was kind of like, it was, heartbreaking. I think the Germans were really not nice on that day. But the other thing, so everyone is interested, very, very high expectations, but then the other thing also is everyone is an expert. Everyone is saying, they should have played this, they should have put this guy in that, especially if you're Brazilian, that's another story. There are 200, 300 million people who actually know exactly what you should do, and they think they would do the job better than you. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you about computer programming that you're onto something, I actually think IT is kind of getting into this right now. Okay, ICT related jobs, it's getting into this. Because someone uses a mobile phone for 2 weeks or uses an iPad for 6 months, and they now believe that they are the experts of technology. They look at their CIOs and they say, why don't we have the same technology in our business that we can use in our home? They look at their audio video equipment in the office and the time it takes to kind of like connect cables and blah, blah, blah. And they say, why doesn't this look like my curved television, at home? Or you get the big stuff that doesn't touch or stuff like this. The expectations are just getting higher. Everyone is interested. Everyone is truly interested, and everyone is an expert. Okay. Now, the IT guys had an interesting job in the past. Their job in the past was to basically automate. Give me anything, I'll automate it. Okay, it gives you a bit of accuracy, it gives you a bit of speed, and so on. Automate, automate, automate. If you had spaghetti of processes and you gave it to IT, you'd get spaghetti of programs. We'll automate without thinking. اديني أي حاجة قدامي هautomate. على طول. مفيش هزار. Okay? Now, after some time, we started thinking, okay, this is a little bit insane, because maybe we need to have a say as IT guys into the validity of some of these processes. And the first step there was to actually eliminate before you automate. So we started thinking a little bit more around elimination, around streamlining, around cleaning up some stuff, so that we don't actually just create a faster spaghetti or an automated spaghetti. With time, we started thinking of IT as true enablers, or ICT as true enablers. We are the ones who can actually help companies achieve their business objectives in a big way. Okay, so enablers. And that lasted for some time. But the reality today is that the expectations from ICT is not only to be enablers, that is not enough anymore, but to actually be drivers of business value, to be drivers of customer satisfaction, to be drivers of growth, to be drivers of profitability. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, to be drivers of success. That's a big responsibility. And if you're in IT, or very, very close to IT, or spend on IT, you have those expectations. We're in Brazilian football. We are in Brazilian football. And that's disruptive. Technologies can disrupt things. Expectations can disrupt things. I mean, the disruption can happen at a company level. It can actually happen at an IT provider level. As a company, as Microsoft, we're learning, we're changing, we're seeing some interesting things, we're trying to move on some things faster than the others. We made so many mistakes. At some point in time, we were not mature enough to kind of like admit those mistakes. I'd like to think that we are wiser and smarter and even hopefully faster now with the help of some of those disruptive technologies. 5 big things. By the way, anytime you talk to someone from information technology, you start by saying, these are interesting times. These are times for change. Every time you hear that. Every conference you hear that. I'm also going to say that because it applies, and it applies in a big way. 5 big things. You see them, you feel them, they have different types of implications. They have implications on your organizations. They certainly have implications on my organization, on Microsoft, and we believe it has implications also on some of our most important customers or potential customers. I think the panel before me spoke about the opportunities and the fact that more than half of the people on the planet do not have the access to technology or do not use it in the way the other half does. In fact, it's probably more than half. So I'd also like to touch around some of the thinking around emerging markets and what these disruptive technologies can do for emerging markets. So what are those 5 things? Cloud. Listen to it everywhere. Mobility, all the time. Mobility is a big one. Social. Whether we're talking about social networks, but we're actually also talking about the social enterprise. Big data and business intelligence. And finally, security. Okay? Not an easy one, not a small one. And in fact, it's getting bigger and bigger. In old Egyptian movies, I'm sure none of you have seen any Egyptian movie. In old Egyptian movies, we had this concept, the spy. We've done a number of spy movies. Probably the most famous one is Saud ila al-Hawiya, which ends with this, which has this incredible thing when they get the spy, who's an Egyptian lady, Isma Abla, and from the plane, he's bringing her back. He looks down, "Wala hiya di Masri Abla," which is a very, very important line in Egyptian cinema. But you need the spies in 2 ways. There are domestic spies, and these guys usually, in Arabic, you'd call them mukhbir. Well, mukhbir, adatan, basically wears a yellow suit, a yellow jacket, tawil, okay, and has a newspaper, margonon, and the newspaper makhroom, so that when he has gunan, can look and see what all the bad guys are doing without him getting noticed. Okay, that's the domestic spy, mukhbir. The international spy, the big guy, okay, who is also going after the bad guys, have those amazing sort of like transmitters, really, really big, that they hide and so on, and keeps like banging on them. I'm sure everyone in the building would hear those bangs and teets and tweets from those, because it's kind of like confidential, very secretive spy work. And but not only this, you actually had to follow people. You had to go where they're going and so on. And our world now is very, very different. And despite all our anxiousness about privacy and security and confidentiality of all of our data, the reality also is that there is a problem. The past 2 days, 3 or 4 days ago, the head of the British, I think it was the intelligence or security agency, said that companies, big companies, very, very big names, have to be careful because they become the command and control of terrorist networks. It's a big one, okay? And it is a real one. But let me go back to cloud. So, okay, with cloud we know we get stuff done, we can get stuff done quickly, we can focus, our time, our attention, our capabilities on things that add value. Infrastructure can move to the cloud. You can turn the infrastructure into platforms, and the platforms can move to the cloud. You can add on those platforms to applications. Applications can turn to the cloud. You can offer your products in the form of services. In fact, for us, it was interesting because there's something, again, fundamentally different in Microsoft, very disruptive, to tell you the truth, because we had no cost of goods. We only had research, development, and people cost. But when we licensed a customer to use our product, we basically had only the cost of the license. There's no cost of goods. But right now, while offering stuff in a cloud form, we actually have massive data centers, people, networks, redundancy, and so on. There is a huge cost of goods. So the more I grow my cloud business, the less profitable I come. The more I grow my cloud business, the less profitable I become. Okay, it's very, very different. Yet, the fact that we have been able to grow our Office 365, which is our productivity on the cloud offering, and Azure, which is our infrastructure and platform as a service, we've been able to grow it with triple-digit growth for 9 consecutive quarters. So it's huge growth. We've gone from 0 to $5 billion of revenue on the cloud, but with a cost, with a big cost. And despite that, our share price has been going way up. So in a way, it's almost like the world is saying, hey, look at that seriously. This is important. The other aspect also, which was another wake-up call, maybe it took us some time to admittedly wake up to this. At some point in time, the personal computer was the only entrance to ICT. You wanted to be on ICT, you needed to use a personal computer. The reality of the matter now is that 70 or 80% of the people who access the internet every day or are into ICT do not necessarily go from a personal computer. They go from a mobile or they go from a tablet. And those mobiles and tablets today don't run Windows. Okay? Or a small percentage of them runs Windows. So in a way, as a company, it even got us to think, okay, do we just care about the platform? Do we just care about the operating system? Or do we care about the full experience? And that's why we started licensing our products and offering our products on iPads, on Android, and so on. In fact, on phones and on small form factors, we actually offer them for free. Even more, we actually offer Windows for free on small devices and for massively in education. It's just a different thinking, and it's disruption all the way, even for the company itself. But the other element also is around mobility. And when you think about cloud and mobility, you have to think about usage in a different way. You have to think about usage in a big way. I have incredible interest in emerging markets. My job in Microsoft is, most of it is around the area that I'm directly responsible for, which is Middle East and Africa. The other part is around the company strategy in emerging markets. And this, emerging markets want few things. They want few things from all of us. They basically want relevance. The stuff that you have to give them has to be relevant. They want affordability. They want it to be affordable. And they want massive, massive investment on skills development, on entrepreneurship, on innovation. So these have to go hand in hand. These have to go together. When we think about mobile, and a lot of people talk about those mobile-first countries, we have to also think that there are countries and places that will be mobile only. When we think about solutions, we will have to think about solutions for people that only use this mobile technology. M-Pesa, which is mobile payment in Kenya, is an incredible example of how mobile technology, a bit of cloud, and a bit of innovation created a completely different and a completely new ecosystem for payment. It's a very, very different world. Today, 2 days ago, I saw a demo from our research guys, which basically, it's about using Cortana, which is our office assistant, artificial intelligence, voice-driven office assistant, to actually get someone who cannot read or write to actions and to fill his e-government forms and stuff like that.
It's a very, very different world. It's a very, very different way of thinking. Social, yes, we all know Facebook, we all know Twitter, but social in enterprise is becoming very important. You know, even, you know, in our world, you know, products like SharePoint and Link, which is now going to be called Skype Business and so on, carry a lot of traffic. People put a lot of things on it, but people want their own Facebook. People want sort of like a secure Facebook. And we have a product called Yammer. It was a company that we actually acquired. It's just the way Yammer is being used internally in a secure way, unstructured way, is incredible. It's allowing people to say very openly what they think about things in the company in a sort of like a secure way. It's allowing the company to learn about how people are responding to it. It's allowing people to put different ideas together in an unstructured way. So it's not just in the form of an email. Social in enterprise is very big. Big data and business intelligence, you can go on and on and on. I'm Egyptian. I come from a country that basically spends more than 25% of its budget on subsidy, on subsidizing important goods. When I was the general manager of Microsoft Egypt, Microsoft bought me an expensive 8-cylinder car. Okay, that was part of my package. That car consumed a lot of gasoline. That gasoline was heavily subsidized. Heavily subsidized. Microsoft did not need the Egyptian government subsidy. I did not need the Egyptian government subsidy. There was no way for me to stop the Egyptian government from subsidizing me. Okay. It's a very different world. Today we can think differently. Today we can use data collection. We can use this ability to get stuff from everywhere, whether it's Internet of Things, sensors and devices in any place, mobile phones and so on, and just have data that we can go through and we can learn from, and we can get very good insights into what's going on. Who really deserves subsidy? Where does the subsidy money go, and so on? And that's Egypt. By the way, India has got a similar problem. Jordan has similar problems. Morocco has similar problems. So many others. Many things can happen there. Many things can happen there. And finally, security. You try and address security by looking at what is inherent in the products that you offer. What additional add-on products that you can have in order to tackle certain things. Like, for example, if you want to do music streaming from the cloud, rights management on Microsoft Azure. These things have to be there. But then there's big room for professional services. There's big room for skills. Okay? So 5 big things, as I said. 5 big things. Cloud, mobility, social or enterprise social, big data and business intelligence, and finally, security. Every day, countries like Jordan, like Lebanon, like Egypt, like Tunisia, like Morocco, and also some countries also in the Gulf, like Oman, like Bahrain, show more and more that youth in those countries can do different things, can think in different ways, can execute in different ways. There's big room for us to do some special things, to do some amazing things. The example that I showed, the company I've never heard of before, but this 3D MENA, which we saw in the opening panel, was a very interesting example for me. So a startup, and from day one, he put MENA on the name. So they're basically going for multiple markets from day one. I don't know why he insisted on the N. It could have been MEA, so then Middle East and Africa, so it can go over. It can be 3D all, it can be 3D the world, but I guess there's always has to be a starting point. Amazing examples, amazing people, amazing country, and a small secret as well, amazing food. Important for me, as you can see. 2:30, 3 o'clock Microsoft office near here, there's a Mansaf party. So I know it will be a break, but those of you who stayed for my session and didn't leave, Maybe you can come over for Mansaf.
And you are an amazing speaker, Ali, but I think we have to wrap it up now.
And I'm actually done. I want to say thanks again, and good luck, and see you at the next MENA ICT.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will actually set you free for 15 minutes. A coffee break if you want to grab something to eat, and we'll be back here at 12:30.
If anyone has lost a massive keychain, if anyone has lost their keys, ask around. So how can businesses, society, government, and people not just cope with this, but also thrive in the midst of it? And what role does the current generation of internet products that we have, including the likes of LinkedIn, play in this? Here to talk to us about that is the co-founder and vice president of product management at LinkedIn, Alan Blue. He's focused on strategy and future-facing product development at LinkedIn. He was also part of the founding team at SocialNet in the late 1990s and has worked as a product manager and designer at PayPal. He sits on the board of the Hope Street Group, a nonprofit group which convenes government, philanthropy, industry, and entrepreneurship to provide economic opportunity to Americans with focus on bringing Silicon Valley-style innovation to Hope Street solutions, jobs, and workforce initiatives. So please, a very warm welcome for Mr. Alan Blue.
Thanks. All right. So can you hear me okay? Great. So hello everybody. I know we're going to have a bunch of people coming in as we go. So if you want to switch over to the presentation. So we talked a lot about disruptive technologies and so forth today. And I wanted to take a little bit of a deeper look at them and talk about things that are coming up where I believe technology can play a big role in basically helping take advantage of technology to deal with the impact that technology and change are having on economies worldwide. This is a big part of the way we think about the world at LinkedIn, so a lot of things I'm going to be talking about are LinkedIn related. People should feel free to shout out questions. I'm happy to stop or whatever if people want clarifications, especially as we are a small and intimate group. When we started earlier today, we started talking about applications and platforms. And in the panel that I sat on this morning, we had about, Jacques mentioned about 12 different sort of disruptive technology platforms that are coming out. So basically kind of the way that technology and innovation tend to work is they start with a platform, a set of capabilities, like the internet is mobile, those are platforms on which you can do things. And then there's a set of applications which get built on top of them. And those applications are the things which actually have the impact in the world. It's what we call businesses. So in a lot of ways, LinkedIn itself is an application which sort of sits on top of the internet. Some of those applications are they actually create new opportunity. So let me give you sort of one of the earliest examples is eBay. Yes, this was my crappy slide earlier. eBay was actually a company which came out which basically created a brand new marketplace to the good of everybody. Because basically eBay was the only place you could go if you wanted to buy something which you couldn't find anyplace else, or you wanted to sell something that was in your garage that you wanted to get rid of. It was basically the only marketplace where you could do that. So basically you created a whole bunch of new opportunity for people through that. As a matter of fact, a lot of the early internet companies were like this. As he mentioned, I was one of the co-founders of a company called SocialNet back in 1997. The original name of that company was relationships.com. It was a dating site. And in 1997, dating sites were the only way in which you were likely to be able to make money on the internet, which is one of the reasons we did it. But dating sites were another place where basically it was kind of a universal good. Because now there was actually a technologically enabled way to meet people with the intent of forming a relationship and getting married. I mean, at this point, dating sites are responsible for tens of millions of marriages. And right now, if you talk to folks, at least in the United States, I think 30 or 40% of them will say they met their current partner via technology, via a dating site, which is actually a pretty remarkable good for the world to help people get together that way. So that's one kind of innovation, one which brings brand new opportunity from the bottom. A second kind was the kind that Amazon created. So Amazon as you know, started out in the world of books. They sold basically books online. And because they were able to increase convenience and they were able to lower prices, they basically ended up disrupting an entire industry of booksellers. There used to be two major national bookseller chains in the United States. They're both pretty much out of business at this point, or at the very least, all of their operations are outside the United States, because Amazon has basically made it so easy to get to books and to do it online and have them delivered to your house. But even this was just shifting economic opportunity from one place to another place. And it actually had one other really powerful added effect. Amazon actually increased the number of books which were being purchased, which is actually sort of a general good for everybody. It increases the power for writers and publishers, and basically creates more economic opportunity, even though different players are taking advantage of it. So that's a different kind of disruption. Again, not a bad one. But there's a set of disruptions that are coming up, and we've talked about some of them here, which actually will disrupt and will destroy opportunity for human beings. So automation is a big one, and you see this picture here on the left. This is Baxter the robot. I don't know if people have seen Baxter around. Baxter is actually, you can see he has a face with little eyes, which sort of look where his hands are going. And basically, he's a robot who is designed to be cheap, additional labor for doing things which were very typically human kind of tasks in assembly plants. So he's very good at putting things in boxes. He's very good at like moving things around on assembly lines, and he's very easy to train to do those things. I met Baxter because I met the guys who wrote this book, and if you're looking for a book recommendation, this is a really good one. It's called The Second Machine Age, and basically, this book starts by talking about the all the amazing things we've been able to do with artificial intelligence and robotics and automation. Talks a lot about chess champions being beaten by Deep Blue and a whole bunch of things which are about the advances of technology along the way. The reason they called it the second machine age was that they said if the first machine age was what occurred in the 19th century, where machines replaced muscles, the second machine age is what's occurring right now, where machines are replacing brains. So basically, the book tells a story about all the breakthroughs that we've had, but it also tells a story about how more and more of the things that we consider uniquely human, these things that we do, pattern recognition and decision making and intuition, will become more and more the realm of machines. And interestingly enough, for those of you who are familiar with Moore's Law, people usually talk, everyone knows what Moore's Law is. If you don't, Moore's Law is basically an observation that Gordon Moore, who was one of the founders of Intel, made back in the 60s, that basically the power of computing would double every 2 years. But the price of computing would also halve every 2 years. Okay? It's actually a very powerful thing. The power of computing allows Baxter to get smart, but the cost reduction allows everyone to have a Baxter. And that's actually the place which is going to make the biggest difference for people who are working on assembly lines today. There was actually an article in the British press just yesterday where basically the British are predicting the loss of roughly 11 million jobs in the next 15 years due to automation. And that's actually something which is going to happen worldwide. This is all happening at a time when basically youth unemployment is a big deal. As you know, it's come up a couple times as we've been talking here. Youth unemployment has basically become a kind of scourge on the generation of 16 to 25-year-olds who are currently trying to enter the workforce. There are places in the world where that number, the unemployment rate, actually, it's not just the unemployment rate, it's something called NEET, N-E-E-T, not an employment, education, or training, where that number basically reaches 70 and 80%. And that's actually an extremely difficult problem, not just for those human beings, but also for the countries that they're part of. So these seem like two forces which are coming together to produce a fairly unhappy future for us. The question is, can we use technology to overcome some of these changes and basically put us on the road where individuals will have the kind of economic power that they need to support their families, to contribute to their communities, and to be able to achieve their own goals? And can we do it at scale? So the first thing that we need to concentrate is on creating new kinds of work. So we talked a little bit earlier about some of the changes and disruptions that have happened. The good thing is the second generation of these products which create new markets are actually now appearing. So you probably recognize these three. These are examples of places where technology is directly enabling human beings to sell or rent their property. In the case of Airbnb, I assume everyone knows what Airbnb is. It's a mechanism by which if you're traveling, you can basically rent your house while you're out if somebody's visiting. So that basically you've got a few weeks when you're out of your house, somebody could come live there basically while you're gone, and you could take advantage of that and basically pay your rent because they're paying you. The second one is TaskRabbit. TaskRabbit is a mechanism by which people basically sign up to do short but skilled components of work. So an example, if you want to rake leaves, or you want to clean a house, or you want to run errands, or you want to go buy the groceries, these are all examples of places where people can raise their hand and say, yes, I'll spend 3 hours doing that for you. And basically you'll be able to find them through TaskRabbit. And the final one is called Crowdflower. There are a bunch of these out there. Crowdflower is a crowdsourcing platform, which basically allows people to create small internet-based tasks like, look at this picture, does it have a cat in it? That kind of stuff. And basically will pay you a penny per picture you actually go look through. So this is an opportunity to take your time and do essentially what is unskilled tasks being delivered through the internet. So these things are all possibilities. They're not great, they're not the best solutions in the world, but they are places where basically internet technology is directly allowing people to make money through technological mediation. There's a second set of things, again, 3 companies you might recognize, which are a bit more in that second category where they're disruptive to existing systems. Okay, so Uber and Lyft are both basically, they have a name for it, but basically they allow anybody with a cell phone to say, hey, I need a car to come pick me up, or a taxi cab to come pick me up, and then a taxi will come pick you up. But the interesting thing is it's not a taxi. It's actually a person driving their own personal car who is signed up to be a taxi driver for a few hours a day or a few hours a week or as a full-time job. This is obviously heavily disruptive to the taxi industry. And in the United States, Uber and Lyft are running into all kinds of resistance from governments who are trying to defend taxi cab organizations, from airports who won't let Ubers come and pick people up. It's a wide variety of things because it's disrupting an existing system. But what it's basically doing is it's taking the business which would have gone to taxi companies and moves it over to a whole new set of people. So it's disruptive, as in it destroys existing businesses, but in so doing, it creates a whole bunch of new businesses. So it's actually a reasonable trade-off. And one really interesting thing is, just like Amazon, these companies have all created additional demand. So let me tell you a story about it. So I was in Los Angeles, so I live in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles, as you may or may not know, is famously a car town. Everybody has a car in Los Angeles, and no matter how short a distance you're going, you get in your car to go do it. The interesting thing is that Uber has actually begun to shift that in Los Angeles. People are literally using Uber instead of using their own cars, and they're actually ending up taking more trips. So it means that basically there's more business for people who are selling rides in Los Angeles than there has been before, because there's so much more convenient access to actually reaching. So it's actually pretty powerful. Not only is it moving things in the market, but it's also creating additional demand. So those two are actually very interesting. I mean, those two types are actually very interesting. They're only a part of what we actually have to do in order to make it work. They all create what we call in the United States sole proprietorships, which are basically places where individuals sign up for them as themselves. With just myself, I'm the only employee of a company which drives an Uber, or a company which delivers groceries for Instacart, whatever it might be. But if you're going to be able to create real economic opportunity, you also need to be able to create businesses which hire other people. So you need to be able to figure out a way through technology to create small businesses. So the question is, can you actually do that? And I think the answer is, yes, you can through entrepreneurship. This is a little bit about entrepreneurship in the US. It was the data I had most readily available to me. you can see how important small businesses really are. I mean, more than 50% of Americans work at a small business. 65% of all the net new jobs created within small businesses, that's since 1995, so in the last 20 years. There are basically 125,000 new small businesses which are created, which hire new employees per month in the US, which is actually quite a lot of economic opportunity. I was actually surprised how big that number is. But if you compare it to the number of sole proprietorships being created, there are 500,000 of those. And that balance between the sole proprietorship and the small business has actually been changing. We have more sole proprietorships being created and fewer of the small businesses. So, can you reverse it? I think you can, and I think if you could create a product which basically could solve these problems for small businesses, you'd be able to attack it. So the first one is, can you build know-how? So how many people here have actually run a small business or worked at a small business? Great, so there's a bunch of people who've actually done it. And I've talked to loads of small business professionals all around the world. The first thing they tell me is that when I first started doing it, I had no idea what I was actually doing, and what I really needed was information. Should I do it? How should I do it? What are the steps in making it successful? So the good thing is that there are a ton of products out there which are good at creating entrepreneurial information right now. There are hundreds of sources out there. LinkedIn is such a platform which has resources. I was talking to some folks earlier about publishing on the LinkedIn platform. But LinkedIn and social networks also have another capacity, which is actually key, and it's a place where social networks are unique. It turns out that it's actually much more efficient to go ask somebody how you start a small business than to read something someone has written about a small business. So it's better off if you can go find someone who actually knows it. One of the interesting things, if you go and search LinkedIn, we have 330 million professionals in LinkedIn. I guarantee you will find someone who has started a business like the one you are considering starting. So with that kind of resource, I think their best example is, yeah, sure, read everything you can on the internet, but also reach out to that person who's done it before and really take advantage of their knowledge. And people, generally speaking, are extremely open to this kind of thing. People love to be asked for their opinion and expertise. Second thing is, can we give people access to services? One of the biggest complaints I have for people who already started a business or who are starting it is, how do I get hold of the professional services I need to be successful? This is stuff like tax accountants, can I find somebody who can help me do the incorporation? What about this government regulation? Do I have a lawyer who can help me with this? Somebody managing my payroll, all of that stuff. Finding those people can be extremely challenging, and finding people who are reputable can be equally challenging. So this is actually a place where LinkedIn started, and a place that basically we want to continue to invest, because we would like LinkedIn to become a mechanism by which anybody who's starting a small business can find essentially a little team of people who can basically be their back office for making their business successful. Because in general, those aren't full-time jobs, and we know you can find those people on LinkedIn right now. The third thing, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier when we were talking on the panel, is about opportunity, about identifying opportunity. So, as I said, we have 330 million people on LinkedIn, and along with those 330 million, we have 4 billion endorsed skills, we have basically 25 billion relationships, we have 3 or 4 million companies, we have 50,000 canonical skills, we have 100,000 universities, we have 2 million jobs. All of that information pulled together basically is something that we call the economic graph. It's basically a collection of all the parts of the economy written together into a single sort of technological back end. You can query that back end to get all kinds of interesting information. Like, for instance, if you're trying to figure out where to locate your small business, or you're trying to figure out where you would actually be able to, who your first customers were and where you're going to be locating in a place where there are customers, the economic graph can basically answer that question for you. So, can it do it today? We probably don't have enough local information. Can we do it tomorrow? Yeah, absolutely. So, theoretically, with all that information in the cloud, we should be able to allow small businesses to pick the right place for their business. And the final bit, and this is an example actually. Right now we have lots of high-level data, but I mentioned this when we were talking earlier. This is an analysis we did talking about people moving into cities and what skills they actually bring with them. This is the kind of analysis that you can do on an ad hoc basis through the economic graph. There's a whole bunch of these on blog.linkedin.com if you want to go see some more examples of the kind of analyses that we're able to do on a regular basis. Okay, so the fourth thing is the thing that LinkedIn does best right now, which is hire and market. These four things together basically form a kind of startup kit, which I hope will be able to reduce the level of risk and cost in developing a small business low enough that more people will be able to enter the business and be able to make it successful. Okay. So that's half the problem. Half the problem is how do you create economic opportunity through actually creating jobs and employment. The other one is basically how do you match skills with the jobs that already exist. So one of the things we have discovered as we've been looking through the information on youth unemployment is that more than 50% of companies worldwide basically say they cannot find the skilled employees who they actually want to be able to hire. They just don't have a pipeline of people coming in. So the question is, can we actually close that gap? There are basically, and I'll get to this in a second, there are basically three folks that we need to pay attention to who make a component of an ecosystem. So you got job seekers. Job seekers want jobs. Employees want to be able to hire workers, and students want to be able to, educators want to be able to attract students. This model is actually not a new model. There are many, many examples worldwide, and as I've traveled around talking to people about how to solve this problem, people tell me the solution to skills matching already exists. I talked to a guy in New Hampshire who basically had set up a kind of education where what he had done is he had gotten together with the local employers to find out what skills were actually required in a particular location. And he had changed his education. He basically was run at community college, and he had altered his community college so that basically it was preparing a pipeline of employees who would go there. We were talking with John this morning about similar things in China, where basically huge organizations are set up specifically to deliver loads of employees to employers who are known to be ready to hire those particular skill sets. So the thing is that we actually have a solution for this in place. The question is, can we actually scale that solution? And that's something that technology is really good at. So the question is, could we actually do it? So for those of you who have actually constructed internet products, you're probably you'll know something about how you build ecosystems. How many people actually work on like consumer internet stuff? A few folks work on consumer internet stuff? Okay, so let me try to explain it. So in general, when you're designing a consumer internet product, the thing you're looking for is, can you create basically relationships between people who have a need and people who basically can supply that need? The very first companies that ever did this were eBay and Amazon, which were basically creating real marketplaces where people who have something and people who need something can come together online to do it. Ecosystems are more complex marketplaces. So this is an example of such a marketplace. If job seekers need jobs, employers need workers, and educators need students, then could we build a tool which basically allows job seekers to find a job and find the training that they need in order to take that job, that allows employers to find training partners, in other words, educators, who can help them educate people on the way into a company? And can we build a tool for educators to help them find those employer partners so that basically they can find the people who they should be collaborating with in terms of developing curricula? This is an example of an ecosystem where everybody in the cycle has a need, and those needs interlock in order to create what we hope will be, we haven't built this yet, but we hope will be a very powerful solution to scale what they did in New Hampshire and make it available everywhere. So, a few months ago, we released what will be one of the first parts of this solution, which is available on LinkedIn now. And this is just a screenshot of it. And it's basically outcomes-driven university rankings. So the idea here, and basically how we did this, is we looked at the most desirable employers based on a whole bunch of factors in terms of the number of people applying to jobs at those employers, rate of filling, speed of filling, like a whole bunch of things which basically indicate that those jobs are in extremely high demand. Then we looked at all the people who actually took jobs in that area, and then we found out which universities were basically outputting the students who were most likely to get the jobs that were in the highest demand. So basically what that meant is that we were able to actually go for each of these areas, we were able to say, for accounting professionals, we can tell you that Villanova University is currently the best at outputting professionals who are basically able to take accounting jobs, the most desirable accounting jobs in the world. So this is intended to be an additional source of data when people who are making choices about which colleges they might attend, an additional source of data they can use to pick the ones which have the kind of career outcomes they care about. Because if we're going to make this work, the most important component of it is building an education reputation system. Because basically, the person who's doing the job seeking and the employer aren't going to trust the educators unless they believe the outcomes from those educators will be of high quality. So if we can crack the problem around education, basically education reputation, we can make this ecosystem work. So the great thing is that if you can actually build a system like this, it's going to have a bunch of fantastic outcomes. And most of them will be in the world of education. The first one is that a lot of education right now is actually not outcomes oriented, because educators have never had a means by which they would compete with other educators to drive outcomes for their students. So when you look at like university rankings, typical university rankings, they don't get rated based on how well their graduates do. They get rated based on how high their matriculation rates are or what other colleges think of them. A whole bunch of things which actually aren't tied to the outcomes which people actually receive after going and taking that training. So I believe we can actually create an environment where universities can actually compete and where outcomes for people can be transparent. The second thing is I believe you can actually create a very, very wide number of education startups. And I think education, if you're going to look for an area where you want to aim a startup, if you're considering a startup, education is a great one. And the reason is this. When we actually get all this information and when we figure out, and as we get deeper and deeper information in the economic graph, I will guarantee you that that most of the skills that are required in the world do not actually have anyone who's teaching them. In other words, there really aren't any resources for learning a lot of the topics that actually matter out there. That's going to be a huge opportunity for people who are the Coursera's, the online educators, basically people who are going to be able to create new forms of education. They're going to be able to find a platform like this as a mechanism for driving results for students. So now's the time, if you want to be innovating, now's the time to actually be innovating in the world of education. Because not only is this information going to be coming online, but also the need for skilling is only going to go up over time. Because if there's anything you've learned, those of you who work in the ICT sector, the rate of change in skills is massive, just massive. You basically have to retrain every couple of years. And that's a huge need. So it's a good opportunity if you actually want to go into something, education's a good place to start. There's actually a person who I've worked with, a woman in New York City who started this startup. It's called Skill Crush. And in a lot of ways, she's kind of the ideal entrepreneur because she's really taking advantage of this. First, she created a product which recombined a whole bunch of ideas: online community, online education, offline instruction, and reputation. She put those things together to create curricula to teach women how to do HTML, CSS, jQuery, a whole bunch of basically basic web technical skills. And she aligned that model with a whole bunch of employers who were in New York City who are basically trying to hire people with those skill sets. And basically, she's positioned herself not only to create a powerful, thriving business, but actually to set an example for businesses which will exist worldwide. So she's just one example of somebody who's already innovating in this space. Notice that she's located in New York City. I think what that means is there are going to be thousands of these entrepreneurs here in Jordan, throughout MENA, throughout the world, because if there's anything we've discovered in the world of online learning, it's that you can't do it entirely online. Okay, so I just wanted to wrap up by saying that I've only been here for about 36 hours. And I got in from Los Angeles late on Monday night, and it's been extremely impressive. meeting people here, learning about the ICT sector here in Jordan, in MENA in general, but particularly here in Jordan. And I was very serious earlier when I was congratulating His Majesty on the work that he's done. It's actually been, it has literally set the stage for a future here in Jordan of entrepreneurism where I believe that this group is going to be able to compete worldwide in terms of the technology you build. And part of that's because of the foundation that you have laid in the last few years, and part of it is because the set of problems and the set of things that you are addressing as a startup community, as an ICT community here, are things which people around the world are going to value. So whether it's water, whether it's dealing with youth unemployment, whether it's managing cultural change in the face of technology, there's a ton of things. Solar, it could be a gigantic number of things which are unique to the capacities that you have here and the problems that you need to solve. The great thing is you actually have the tools by which you can solve them. You can begin to create solutions. And if you can build those solutions, there are people all around the world who do not have your head start, who don't have an environment like this one in which to create things. So I hope you'll take advantage of it, because I'm looking forward to using software created in Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. This was both very inspiring and very encouraging. Please welcome our second keynote speaker, Nami Zaringaram. Nami is the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of Truecaller, the world's largest verified mobile phone community with over 70 million users globally. Nami oversees the long-term partnerships and the development of product roadmaps to bolster Truecaller's growth. Previously, Nami co-founded 2 startups in Sweden, which became the larger search engine. Nami is with us today to speak on lessons learned on growth hacking apps to the top of the charts in Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America. Nami.
All right. Whoa. All right. Sorry about that. So thank you guys for being here. I'm really happy to be visiting Jordan again. This is my second visit in Jordan. First time was for vacation. I had a wonderful time 6 months ago. So I was really happy to be invited here again, but this time for representing Truecaller at this great event. So just a quick introduction. Well, you already had that basically. So I work together with a team at Truecaller to spur the growth of Truecaller in new markets and cement Truecaller in markets where we're already strong. Jordan is one of those markets, which is why this is a really great event for us to be at. I also work with product roadmap and long-term partnerships, including some partnerships that we've announced in Middle East and in Jordan specifically, and some upcoming partnerships that we'll be announcing in a couple of weeks, hopefully. So Truecaller, I think that most people here know what Truecaller is, but just to give a brief intro to those of you who don't, Truecaller is an application which allows you to search for people worldwide by name or phone number. And our mission from the start has been to give you as much information as possible about the people you're communicating with. So looking back at that, we also allow you to take actions based on that information which you For instance, if you have a lot of spam callers, or if you have someone bothering you in the middle of the night, you can actually block those people as well. Caller ID is one of the other great features in Truecaller. So on most platforms, we actually show you who is calling while you're receiving the call. So I'm going to stop here at this slide before I go to the next ones quickly, and basically trying to describe how we started Truecaller and the journey that we've been through. How many entrepreneurs are there in here? Raise your hands. Okay, there's a couple. Great. So hopefully this will be of some use. At least it's a kind of plan of how we worked with the product and how we worked with investors and some other things which helped us on the journey. So first thing, when we launched Truecaller, it was back in 2009. Some people don't believe that we've been doing this for 5 years, but we've been doing this for quite some time, and it wasn't always easy. We haven't always had the growth that we have, and so on. But we've kept pushing the boundaries. So back in 2009, when me and my co-founder Alan launched Truecaller, we launched it on a forum. And the reason we launched it on a forum was that it was just a hack. We talked about this earlier in the panel, I think, with like the early adopters and kind of how things get started. So we actually wanted to solve a problem that we had ourselves. So we developed Truecaller, and we put it up on a forum, hopefully to help people who had a similar problem. And within the first week, we had 10,000 users of Truecaller, which back in 2009, when people would have to transfer an installation file, like download it on their laptop and transfer it over Bluetooth to their phone, and actually like start the file explorer and go through this horrible process of installing an application on their phone, it was a big deal. So we put it out there, and we immediately got the great feedback from a lot of people saying, I want this, can you make it work for this country, this country, this country? And we kept adding countries to the list, to supporting countries, and then finally we reached a point where we said, okay, this is probably going to be a full-time job for us. But to do that, we needed to speak to investors, and I mean there wasn't a monetization model, so we spoke to investors, and this was one of the first. We succeeded in bringing some seed investment into Truecaller, about 200K USDs, and we said, okay, now we're going to take the world. But before we do that, there was something happening. There was a technology shift where Nokia and some other people were losing grounds, and iPhone had been released in larger parts of the world, and Android was just being rolled out. And in this kind of environment, we decided that our first developer was going to be developing for Android. And this was like big deal because our investors, naturally, they were using iPhones because that was what was common back then. And one of our first investors actually said, in 5 years, I can promise you that everyone in the world will have an iPhone. It didn't happen, but and we're happy that things have evolved, but not everyone in the world has an iPhone. So we kept developing the product with Android in mind, and we kept developing for the more open platforms first. Now, why this is important is because when the rest of the world were developing towards iOS, we looked at where we got feedback. So you can actually, if you go online and search for my name or Alan's name, you can actually find still forums from 2009 where we were active, asking people, please give us feedback, and they were giving us feedback. So this was the way we marketed ourselves in the beginning. We actually, were all around the, like in any mobile forum that you could find online, we were writing forum posts asking people for their feedback. They gave feedback and we responded. So, you know, for a lot of people, that meant a lot, like the founders of this company is responding to me. So that's one of the first things that I would like to say, like share with everyone here. Like if you're building a company, and especially if you're building a app company, make sure that you involve the community, involve the people that you're sharing your service with, and take their feedback and listen to it really carefully. What are they really saying? So in our case, we knew that the markets that enjoyed using Truecaller was actually Middle East, was the first region where we got a lot of users. India was the second, and then we had some users spread out from like North America to Europe and so on as well. But our product was actually really popular among the early adopters in the Middle East. So that's why we knew that we had to go with Androids as our like develop for Android, and still support Symbian, still support, you know, all these other platforms, BlackBerry and so on, which was really popular back then as well. So we actually supported all the platforms just to make sure that wherever you went, you could use Truecaller. And still today, that's the mentality that we have in Truecaller. And I think, you know, in the long term, it's given us a huge strategic benefit if you compare to like a lot of other similar apps with you know, similar hopes and visions. So yeah, just go with your markets, listen to where your users are from, and go with them, engage with them. Now, coming back to the funding, again, all of our investors were sitting there with iPhones and they didn't get it. They were like, I don't get it. Why is this a good product? Why is this even popular? I mean, they were investing, but they were still wondering, how is this becoming popular, you know? And we started to look into what we could do to improve this. So to all the entrepreneurs out there that are working with apps and so on, make sure that if you're approaching investors and so on, that they can understand your product. That will, even if you have fantastic growth, it's going to help a lot to be able to, well, for them to be able to get it, like get what the essence of the product is. So obviously we managed to go through the funding, and now we had users, and we had a couple of 100,000 users. We had a couple of well, we were 2 people, and we just hired our first engineer, and who's today our CTO. And next thing was, how do we scale this up? How do we really become a company and not just sit in my living room, which we were doing back then? So, you know, we started to recruit, and we went to all the universities, and we recruited people. Like we spoke to people who were there and who liked the product, and we recruited them. But we quickly ran into a problem, which was, you know, when you're recruiting people, what kind of values do those people have? Are they going to stay long-term with your company? Are they going to engage with it? Are they going to live, eat, and breathe Truecaller? In our case, you know, we were lucky. We had a lot of great people surrounding us. Our chairman was one of them who had built a company before. So, you know, we listened a lot to what he had to say, and he helped us in our recruitment, and we set values that were based on the values of the founders that we wanted everyone who comes into Truecaller to have. And I can tell you that every time we tried to recruit someone who we felt didn't share even one of those values. We set 4 core values: respect, having fun, word that is a made-up Swedish. It's actually a Swedish word which is translated. It's called prestigelöshet in Swedish. Means prestigelessness, or like we translate it to prestigelessness. Take prestige out of it. Don't put your ego into the product or into trying to get things done. And when we did those things, we were able to move ahead of the curve and recruit people who actually felt the same way that we did, thought the same way that we did, and wanted to share the same vision that we did. And we're passionate about this. So picking the right team became really essential. And at this point, I also want to talk about one of the things which we did pretty early on, which was engaging with the community in a more close way. So what we did was we started an ambassadorship program. So if you were passionate about Truecaller, you could become an ambassador, and these ambassadors then talked about Truecaller at their universities or at fairs or like events like this and so on. And this was also one of the keys to our success. So we actually have 3 ambassadors here today, I think, who've helped us, and I'd like to applaud them for doing such amazing work here, even though we hadn't, as founders or like the company, we have never been in Jordan before, and still, they managed to get people engaged and talk about Truecaller. And actually, one of our first business deals came because our ambassadors were talking to like operators in the region, and they were engaging with them. And so one of our first business deals came from that. So that's one of the things. Then we come to follow the tracks, and follow the tracks. This is basically about understanding what your users want and what they're doing, and how you can engineer your own success. So in the case of Truecaller, there's actually a formula that we have, which depending on the mobile phone penetration, the internet penetration, the population, and so on, a couple of different things, creates curves which describe our growth pattern. And we've seen this, and the first time this happened was Lebanon was the first country where Truecaller really grew big. So it was around Christmas time, 2011. We were sitting at the office working, and suddenly there's someone who tweets to us saying, "Guys, you're on the news in Lebanon," and we're like, "What?" So we go into YouTube and check it out, and we're actually on a YouTube channel from one of the bigger TV news who walk around on the street, does a 2-minute reportage about Truecaller, and asking people, what do you think about Truecaller? And people respond, like, some people thought it was great, some people thought it was less great. But regardless, that's when we realized that, we had been focusing on a lot of different things, but we had missed that suddenly in Lebanon something was happening. And we backtracked that data, and this is kind of about engineering your growth. So you need to backtrack the data and see what are those users doing, the ones who are creating success for you. What are they doing, and can you get other people to walk in the same path? So when you're creating a service like Truecaller, it's maybe about onboarding, maybe about messaging, setting expectations. What do people expect out of this application when they download it? And so we took the small budget that we had for that year, which was 5,000 USDs for marketing in 2012. And we set the whole thing on acquiring users in Jordan and seeing if we could replicate what happened in Lebanon, in Jordan, knowing that we had this formula that we thought would create success for us. We worked with the messaging, we worked with all these things, and surely enough, we were able to get a substantial enough user base in Jordan so that the application would automatically start growing, and we didn't need to feed it with like acquisition of users anymore. And I think for any company, the formula is going to be different, but the main thesis about it is that the first people who come on are going to be the contributors and who are going to create data and content that the rest of the people will be using. So the sooner you get over that curve, the first curve, you get to the bigger curve that becomes really steep and really powerful, the hockey curve, hockey club curve, basically. And yeah, so that's what we did, and it worked out in Jordan. A couple of months later, things started to grow in other countries, and by end of 2012, we had created the same momentum in India. And this was pretty great news because at this point in 2013, all the companies, if you look at global companies such as Twitter or Facebook and so on, they started to look at India as one of the growth markets. So another way of engineering our success was to take this opportunity. Like, we were big in India, and in terms of monetization and so on, there's not a lot happening in India, but it's powerful because all these great companies in the US, for instance, or in other parts of the world, are looking for these countries like the MENA region, or Africa, or Sub-Saharan Africa, or India, for instance, and they're looking for those countries and those regions as their growth opportunities. So when they saw that we were big in these places, they wanted to partner with us there, and in return, we get a partnership where they are big. So this is another way we actually engineered our success in a new market, by looking at what we could do together. For instance, we launched a partnership with Twitter, and it was a pretty big partnership, and we got it through just about, like it was about to not happen. But because they knew that we were so strong in India, where they wanted to grow, and they were less, they were a smaller brand than we were in India, they looked at us and said, hey, let's partner, and we'll figure things out on the way, but let's partner now. So we did that, and that created growth for us in other regions. So for instance, US, which is now our third fastest growing market. So yeah, and then go for the long term. Lastly, and what we basically wanted to share here is that Truecaller is here to develop a service that will stay with you for years to come. And as such, we've started to look into different opportunities, looking at partnerships which will last, which is part of my role, and make sure that whatever you do is going to move the needle. Never do things that doesn't move the needle. Like, yeah. And from doing all these things, both large and small, we got to this. So today we have over 85 million users. They're doing over 1.6 billion searches per month in Truecaller. So, and we're adding more than 200,000 new users per day. Sorry. And over 1 billion phone numbers and people are actually searchable in Truecaller. So it actually has, we've created a pretty big network of people who are connected, who want to use this service. And how about Jordan? So I think because you can see the difference here with you know how we've been active in Jordan for quite some years. It was our second market to grow, and today more than 50% of the population has Truecaller installed, which we think is a fantastic accomplishment. And 1/3 of the smartphones in India has Truecaller installed. Now, India came after, and it's also a much larger market, but you know, we're seeing the same patterns happening in more countries. So the countries where we're growing: India, Egypt, United States, Kenya. I mean, you can see from this list that it's a lot of the emerging markets, the next billion markets, as they say. But it's also a lot of, like, I think number 11 on the list is actually UK, and there's a couple of, like, Sweden and some other places. So, you know, this service is something which attracts people from all over the world. And if you would build something that you think is going to last, make sure that you try to do it thinking about how everyone's going to use this. And in our app development, this was actually, I mean, just you know, looking at some of the things we did when we developed Truecaller was that you know, we looked at everyone in the office, like all the developers. We got them a device called Samsung Galaxy Y. It's a really, really bad device. It's really small. I'm sorry if there's anyone from Samsung here, but you know, it's really small, tiny screen, still touch screen, really slow, but extremely popular because it only costs $50. So, you know, a lot of people have this device, and those people are tomorrow going to have a nicer device. In 1 year, in 2 years, they're going to have a nicer device. So you need, when you're thinking about, you know, developing, make sure that you support these devices as well. Don't just sit there with your nice, you know, Nexus 5 device or the iPhone 6 and think that, well, this is the experience that all the users are going to have. They're not. And you need to make sure that it works on all these other devices as well. So that was one of the bigger challenges that we did, but because we did it, we were able to capture you know, markets such as India. Because we partnered with Nokia, even though everyone in the world were saying Nokia is going down, we were able to grow in markets like Middle East and Africa. Because we did partnerships with BlackBerry, we were able to grow in Indonesia, and so on. So, you know, don't exclude ecosystem owners because you think that, you know, you shouldn't, well, that your primary focus is here. If you really want to build a company which supports a lot of users, then, you know, you'll have to think about these things. And that was actually it. Thank you.